Hello there. Welcome in. Glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or you're listening on the streaming apps of those two fine radio stations, which you can find anywhere. Fine streaming apps are given away because they are free to download and they are free to use at all times. You can listen to this or any of your favorite shows on either station in crystal clear streaming audio. Of course, there is another way to consume the show on a daily basis that is sweeping the nation, and that is to watch the show via live stream anywhere you scroll. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts. You could call or text them in at 719-247-1313. You could also just simply drop a comment right there on the live stream wherever you are scrolling. Let's start with the story. It's a national story. It affects all of baseball, and it is what the Los Angeles Dodgers did over the weekend. Now, I want to say to start, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, congratulations are in order for the Los Angeles Dodgers because they have officially beaten the system. They are so much better at this baseball thing than everybody else that even baseball fans, people who love baseball, who plan their year around baseball, want there to be no season next year so the system can be fixed and the Dodgers can no longer make everyone else in the league look foolish. I mean that sincerely. The Dodgers deserve all the credit in the world for what they have done. LA was able to acquire the best pitcher in baseball, arguably, in Tarek Skubal, without giving up a single Major League Baseball player, because the prevailing thought around the league was only with the Dodgers would you be getting Tarek Skubal for more than just a couple of months. So why would the Brewers, the Rays, or any other team offer up two of their top 10 prospects if Tarek Skubal's not going to sign with them? The Dodgers were able to acquire Tarek Skubal because Tarek Skubal is going to sign with the Dodgers this winter. And anyone who doesn't believe that is lying to themselves. For everyone else, it would be a rental. For the Dodgers, it's another ace on a staff of aces. And the Dodgers deserve credit. Tarek Skubal doesn't. I mean, we got to talk about Tarek Skubal and, you know, what kind of a competitor he is, that he wants to be a Dodger and not go to the Brewers or another team and go right at the Dodgers. Question is competitiveness, but remember, he bailed on Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, so I'm not totally surprised. But as far as the Dodgers are concerned, they get credit because they have created this baseball utopia that every star player and every non-star player, for that matter, wants to be a part of it. Again, they're perfect. And I am not mad at the Dodgers. Truly. They are being used as a convenient excuse by the other owners to lock the players out and create a salary cap league, something that they have been wanting to do for longer than the Dodgers have been up to all of this. Okay, so the Dodgers are their convenient excuse. But they've wanted this for years. They didn't just wake up one day. It wasn't just when the Dodgers signed Shohei Ohtani or acquired Tarek Skubal this weekend that the major league owners are like, we should have a salary cap. So they're being used as the excuse, as the villain in this story. We should all be so lucky to have an ownership group that is willing to spend so much to improve our team and to win at all costs and to create an organization that players desperately want to play for. We should all be so lucky. Dodgers have done that. Nobody else has. So all of that being said, the Dodgers are not the problem. The Dodgers are proof of the problem. MLB agreed during the McCourt bankruptcy, the Dodgers' previous owner, that the fair market value of the Dodgers television rights would be based on the rejected $3 billion Fox deal. Major League Baseball decided that, and the new Dodger ownership was able to go out with Time Warner and get something in the ballpark of $8.5 billion. Is that the Dodgers' fault? Absolutely not. It's baseball's fault. So the Dodgers got to keep far more of that television windfall than if revenue sharing had been calculated based on the deal they signed with Time Warner. That television money helps create a world where they can sign Shohei Ohtani, defer a lot of his salary, so now only $46 million counts towards the luxury tax and not $70. Again, not against the rules, not the Dodgers' problem. It's baseball's problem. The Dodgers didn't break the rules. They mastered them. The Dodgers are not the problem. The Dodgers are proof of the problem. And I think people truly at their core, yes, they need a face, or in this case, a logo to hate, right? And the Dodgers have become that. But I truly believe that people deep down are not mad at the Dodgers. They're mad at baseball for letting this get so screwed up. And they want this system to be fixed, and it will be fixed. There will be a lockout next year, and baseball will join the 3 other major sports leagues in instituting a salary cap. And there will be a floor. For those of you saying, what about the owners who won't spend? There will be that too. There will be a floor. There will be a cap. Because that's the American way of doing things in sports. The fact that baseball has survived George Steinbrenner's Yankees, it survived the Red Sox under Theo Epstein, it survived every superpower until now. And it's just, you wonder why wasn't the uproar more when the Yankees were winning or when the Red Sox had Theo Epstein and were doing kind of what the Dodgers do, where they were better at, analytics than everybody else, and they had an unlimited budget. Why didn't it happen then? It's because the Dodgers have taken it to a new level. They have found every loophole, every corner that they can get around, and they have exploited it to the point that it's unfair. It truly is. It's unfair to everybody else in Major League Baseball. And so the sport will be shut down. They will come back with the salary cap. And we'll see what baseball looks like from there on out. But I truly, again, mean this. The Dodgers deserve credit. They have created a perfect baseball machine, but that machine needs to be dismantled for the betterment of the sport. You served a greater purpose than winning World Series. You exposed all the remaining flaws in Major League Baseball. And they'll have to sit down and they'll have to close all of these loopholes. They'll have to fix all of this stuff in order to keep you tethered. And look, if you're a Dodger fan, feel persecuted, feel picked on, proudly tweet out the Robert Pattinson meme from the Odyssey, get these beggars out of here, or Paris Hilton, stop being poor. Like, I think the way that Dodger fans are feeling right now is absolutely deserved. But you have to understand, you have to acknowledge that if you were in the same position as any other team, if you were a fan of any other team in the league, you would be right beside us saying this has to be fixed. You have to admit that. You can feel picked on. You can hold your head up high knowing that everybody is crazy jealous of your baseball team. We all wish that our baseball teams were half as good as yours, but understand that if you were in our shoes, you'd be calling for the exact same thing, because at the end of the day, baseball needs this. This isn't the English Premier League, because in the Premier League, yes, there are teams that far and away outspend everybody. And there's a good chunk of teams in the Premier League that have no realistic shot at competing for a title. But they have something else. They have promotion and relegation. Right? They have another thing that their fans can invest in. With baseball, this is it. Unless you're going to start, banishing the A's to AAA and bringing up the Albuquerque Isotopes, that's all anyone has, is that World Series trophy, that piece of metal that Rob Manfred so lovingly described it as. That's all we have. And so the playing field has to be leveled. And baseball is going to do that. And now look, I think the Dodgers will be fine. I don't think they'll come out of this and all of a sudden the Dodgers will go down the tubes, but they will have more competition right now than they currently do. And here's the thing about it, and this is something that we have to come to grips with as well. The utopia that people are hoping for, in which the Dodgers come back to the pack. Okay, don't be like it'll be the NFL, right? Parity, and that's what works. Be careful, because Major League Baseball has actually produced more different champions over the last 30 years than the NFL has. So when we talk about parity, when we talk about the level playing field, it's really for postseason access. Because there's a direct correlation between the highest payrolls in baseball and who makes the postseason. Pirates, Rockies, A's, Rays, Orioles, you go down the list. There's only one or two of those group of teams that are going to make the playoffs on an every year basis. More of them will make the playoffs under a salary cap model. However, the best and smartest organizations will still win the World Series. Right? And the Dodgers will still be one of those. So this is not a doomsday scenario for the Dodgers. This is just, you're going to have to work a little bit harder. You're going to have a little bit more competition. I think the Dodgers can find their way through the brave new world of baseball, but this is necessary. And we do owe a debt of gratitude to the Dodgers for exposing all of these flaws. 719-247-1313. Have the Dodgers ruin baseball? Or was baseball already ruined and the Dodgers just took advantage of it? I think there's a difference. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. 1313 coming up next with off-season ankle surgery. How will it inhibit Bo Nix's superpower? That's next on Drive Time Sports. Want to see every Air Force football home game this fall? Be listening all this week for your chance to qualify to win 4 season tickets to the upcoming Air Force football season. You get one opportunity each day between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. with Jim Arthur and Sean Martinez on Colorado Springs Morning News on KVOR. And then I'll have a chance for you to get qualified each and every day, including today. So be listening for that. And once we gather up the qualifiers, get a little bit closer to kickoff, we will be picking a winner to win 4 season tickets to the upcoming Air Force football season. So we're not above bribing you to listen to us. That's for sure. All right, Broncos camp continues. Bo Nix, how are you feeling?
I feel great. Feel normal. Feel, nothing's holding me back. I'm out there playing like I normally do, and feel really good at my spot. So I'm going to continue to push it and progress, and also going to continue to physically get ready for this long season. But right now, I'm exactly where I want to be as for our plan, and actually was a little bit ahead from where I was last year going into the season, going into the summer. So, feel really good. Feel like I'm in a good spot. And I think it's, showing on the field.
He's ahead of where he was last year. I don't think that's health. I think that's in terms of being ready for camp. It might be more his grasp of the offense and what he needs to do. I don't know that he's saying that he's ahead of where he was last year health-wise. But the important thing is Bo Nix is feeling good. However, off-season ankle surgery, a little bit of a concern. No way that Bo Nix is going to keep running with the football, is he?
Absolutely not. I'm gonna roll, and I'm gonna be as athletic as I can be. And earlier question, it's a strength of ours, and so we got to use our strengths. And for me, that's when I feel at my best, and that's when I feel free. When I'm playing like that, when I'm moving around, it's a good thing.
And I agree with him. And look, there's a reason why there's training camp, right? If Bo Nix shows no ill effects all throughout, doesn't re-aggravate anything all throughout, then I say week 1, all systems go. Right? You got enough time. If he's able to respond to all of this, you're always going to increase the likelihood you get hurt once the regular season rolls around. But if there's nothing, and we haven't had anything since that setback way back when, we haven't had any negative reporting when it comes to Bo Nix's ankle or his health in general. So if he gets through training camp in the preseason just fine, then I think Monday night in Arrowhead, let Bo Nix play. Let him go. Let him feel free, in his words. And look, we all know that his superpower, and Sean Payton called it as much today, is his ability to use his legs. But when Sean Payton brought it up, and I'll play the audio for you here, he brings it up in one type of way. And I think that the key for Bo Nix this year, and by extension the Denver Broncos, is using it in a different way. So here's Sean Payton on being all for Bo Nix running the football.
It's one of his superpowers. And it's hard to sack some quarterbacks. He's one of them. And that was something you saw on college tape. And in our league, when you take a sack, you just do the analytics on what your points become in that drive or likelihood to kick a field goal, and it all drops dramatically. So it's certainly one of his strengths.
And that's all well and good. But what I'm looking for this year, what I'm calling for this year, is let's be done with the Bo Nix using his legs to avoid sacks. Okay, this is part of where, Bo Nix in the minds of people nationally gets pushed down the list a little bit, and it agitates Broncos fans so much. Why isn't Bo Nix getting his love? Because all Sean Payton talks about is Bo Nix's ability to operate his offense and avoid sacks. That's not what you talk about when you talk about Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. You talk about their superpowers. But he brings up a superpower and then goes on to say, well, he doesn't get sacked. Like, that's fine and that's valuable. But let's start talking about Bo Nix being a dynamic football player instead of just a guy who operates Sean Payton's offense well. He was 6th in carries last year among quarterbacks. But I found this interesting. He was 11th in yards and 19th in yards per carry. What that tells you is that Bo Nix is running the football to do exactly what Sean Payton's describing there. To not get sacked. To not put the Broncos behind the chains. This year, those numbers need to level out a little bit. If he's going to be 6th in carries, he needs to be like 6th in yards. I think what we're looking for this year from Bo Nix with Davis Webb as his offensive coordinator is a few more design runs for Bo Nix. And also, even before that, how about just reinforcing to Bo Nix, like, hey, dude, if you can get a few extra yards, like if you get back to the line of scrimmage, like don't just decide that's good enough. Here comes 2nd and 10. Turn it upfield, get a few more yards, put the Broncos ahead of the chains. And I'll say this in Bo Nix's defense. I don't put this on him. I don't think that Bo Nix is incapable of being a more dynamic runner of the football. I think it's just early on in his career, Sean Payton drilling it into his head that the best thing he can do is keep the Broncos from getting behind the sticks and avoiding sacks. Now the messaging needs to change. This is year 3. This is the Broncos trying to take that next step and become a team that plays in a Super Bowl. Let Bo Nix run it. Now, there's always going to be a balance. Right? Ultimately, what wins in this is the progression of Lamar Jackson. Right? He was a runner of the football, and it was great, and it was exciting, and it was dynamic, but he wasn't winning from the pocket, and the Ravens weren't winning. Or winning a Super Bowl, right? So Lamar Jackson had to develop more in the pocket. Bo Nix is going to have to win from the pocket. We put a lot on these quarterbacks. They kind of got to do everything, right? There's still a place for that. And I don't think anybody wants Bo Nix to, turn into a running quarterback. But watching last year and looking at the numbers, there's more here. There truly is. And look, that's the story across the board for the Denver Broncos. Everything they did last year was good enough to get to an AFC championship. In an alternate reality where Bo Nix plays the AFC championship, most people think it would have been enough to get to a Super Bowl. But every year you have to get better. So this Broncos team, and it's been a message from Sean Payton since camp has started, and we're just about a week into this thing. They got to find those areas where they could be a little bit better, even if it's in an area that they're already good, right? Bo Nix's legs have been a positive for the Denver Broncos. Now it's time to stretch it out a little bit and see if his legs can be even more beneficial to the Denver Broncos. Don't want to get carried away. You got to find that balance, but I think there's more here. There's more to Bo Nix as a runner of the football than what he has shown the first 2 years. Now, as far as Bo Nix winning from the pocket, here's where Jalen Waddle comes in. Here's Bo Nix on the addition of Waddle.
He's an explosive playmaker. Guy's really good at what he does. He gets open, he makes plays, he's fast, he's really explosive. He's great ball in hand. He's great going and getting the ball deep. He's great, in screen game. He can do just a lot of things. He's very versatile. So he adds an extra element to our offense, and it's exciting.
Now, it would be easier for Bo Nix to list the things Jalen Waddle isn't good at. But you've heard that before. That is not revelatory. You've heard all the different ways that a team can use Jalen Waddle and all the skill sets that he has. Here's maybe the most important thing, given what happened to the Denver Broncos last year. Jalen Waddle catches the football. Last year, Jalen Waddle had a drop rate of 4%. That's better than league average. He's not maybe the most elite catcher of the football, but he's above league average. The only two receivers that the Broncos utilized last year that were above where Jalen Waddle was in terms of drop rate, Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims, with far fewer targets than Jalen Waddle had. Okay, Cortland Sutton, below average when it comes to his ability to keep a hold of the ball. In fact, I found this not to be a fun fact because it's bad for the Broncos. Evan Ingram and RJ Harvey were two of the worst 10 players in the league last year in drop rate. We could talk about all the different ways that Davis Webb and Sean Payton can employ Jalen Waddle and how it will benefit the Broncos offense. But at its core, when you talk about what the Broncos needed out of their receiving core last year that they didn't get, simply catching the football. Jalen Waddle is going to give them that. Now, other guys got to improve, but you have a guy that has proven over the course of his career that he will be able to catch the football, and that was something only one team dropped more passes than the Denver Broncos last year. Jalen Waddle is going to help that, and that is a huge help to Bo Nix as he enters a significant year, right? And I've been talking about this. After this season is over, the conversation about whether to extend Bo Nix and whether he deserves to get paid along with the top quarterbacks in the game, that's going to begin. That's going to be based on this season's performance. And Bo Nix knows that, but he doesn't think it changes his approach at all.
For every player, it's going to feel like a contract year. It should, because you got to go out there and continue to earn it day by day, because there's only 32 people in my position that and a lot of many others that are trying to get in that same position. So no days can you take off, and no days can you come out here and give half effort or not be prepared, not be ready to go. And I think at the end of the day, that's just the internal motivation I have to not let my teammates down and not let the organization down. And, I owe them my 100%. And no matter if I was being paid for it or not being paid for it, they're my teammates, and we all work hard together, and it's my job to go out there and put them in the best situation possible.
I think we'll know this year what Bo Nix's 100% is, what that looks like. I think we were close last year, very close. But we'll know this year, right? The health stuff has kind of gone to the side. He's good. He's ready to rock and roll. They added Jalen Waddle, change play callers, all of this kind of stuff. Whether he was at 98% last year, 95%, 80%, I think we're going to know what his 100% is. And then that's the player that we will be discussing all next offseason on whether he deserves to get paid along with the, Mahomes, Burrows, Staffords of the world. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the thoughts of Bo Nix. Coming up next, we'll stick with the Broncos, and it was bound to happen that the Broncos would have some bad ideas. Boy, do they have a couple of bad ones brewing. I'll tell you about them next. Family fun doesn't have to cost a fortune. Save half off or more on attractions like Overdrive Raceway, Bogies and Brews, and the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Museum with sweet deals. Shop now at extrasports1300.com or kvor.com. I can't think of an owner in recent history who has hit on more things out of the gate than Greg Penner has with the Denver Broncos, right? New scoreboard was like his first order of business. To say nothing of, getting Sean Payton, right? So I guess we'll add Sean Payton to it. So Sean Payton, new scoreboard, replacing the grass a couple of times a year. New practice facility now that all reports are this thing will blow your mind. I saw a quote from Joe Buck, who now lives in the Denver area, and he was visiting Broncos camp, and he says he never seen anything like the facility that the Broncos have built. And, of course, on the horizon, a new stadium. All of it paid for by Greg Penner and his ownership group, which is the best part about it, if you really think about it. Right? It's not your money. But clearly, it was all to just butter you up. And now I see it. Now I see Greg Penner for what he's doing. All of this was just to butter you up for when they drop the news that you are actually going to help them pay for the new stadium. Team president Damani Leach over the weekend said it was pretty likely that the Broncos will utilize PSLs, not pumpkin spice lattes. Although the only thing I can think of that is worse than pumpkin spice lattes are personal seat licenses. That's what we're talking about here. Personal seat licenses. They're the way to get money out of taxpayers without taxing them. If you want to remain a season ticket holder, when the Broncos go to the new stadium, you have to pay for that right. If they go through with this, the honeymoon phase is over. Not to say that, Greg Penner would all of a sudden be the worst owner in all of sport, but this honeymoon period where he can do no wrong and he is the greatest owner in the history of Colorado sports and all this kind of stuff, that's going to be over. Because he's going to prove that he's not much different than any of these other owners. If they can find a way to offset some of their cost, they're going to do it. And I think this is a massive misstep by the Broncos organization and the Broncos ownership. I really do. Because the Broncos, I know as well as you do, I grew up amongst Broncos fans. I understand that it is rare to find a fan base in any sport more dedicated, more loyal than Broncos fans. Trust me, they will pay the higher price because we know that season tickets at the new stadium are going to be more expensive. And I think most Broncos fans are fine with that. But they'll pay for that. Don't worry. You don't have to force them to prove to you that they will buy them by making them pay for a personal seat license. By doing this, you're really doing two things all detrimental to your image if you're Greg Penner and the Denver Broncos. One, you're asking fans to essentially prove their loyalty. Like, this isn't Stan Kroenke building a stadium in Inglewood for a very passive fan base in LA and saying, I need some assurances that you guys are going to show up. This is as sports crazed a market as there is in America. You shouldn't be asking your fan base to prove to you that they are loyal and that they will give you their hard-earned money when the new stadium is open. They will. Two, you're pricing out some of these real fans right? And you're giving a lot of these PSLs are going to be bought by corporations. They're going to be bought by the ultra rich who buy them as a flex, not because necessarily they're dedicated as a Broncos fan and want to go and make it one of the best home field advantages in all of sport. So you're going to lose some of that atmosphere that you have right now at Empower Field because some of the real fans are not going to be able to afford to have season tickets. And then 3, you're risking, and I mentioned this earlier, being like everybody else. There was a time here where it seemed like Greg Penner was different than a lot of owners. He has that Walmart money. Don't worry, I got this. And doing this doesn't make him as special. And maybe he doesn't care about that. But there was this air about him that he was different, unique, better than other owners, better than his peers. Utilizing PSLs does not make you better. It makes you like everybody else. When you don't have to be. Because again, Walmart money. And one of the most dedicated fan bases in all of sports. You don't need this help. You don't need it. You can absolutely build this stadium on your own, and that's why this feels different. This isn't about what's possible, what you can do. It's what you should be doing. Should you be doing this? And I think this is a risk that the Broncos are taking here. Damani Leach already said over the weekend that the process is taking a little longer than they would like. What happens if the public starts to shift a little bit and go, you know what? We kind of like the stadium the way it is. I don't think we need a new stadium. Well, how many of those Denver lawmakers are going to go, well, these are the people that are voting for me. My constituents are all of a sudden souring on this stadium. Maybe I'm not going to green light every aspect of this project. I mean, this could get more difficult for the Denver Broncos to do this, and people could start to look around and go, you know what? Maybe Empower Field isn't a great stadium, but do we really need to host a Super Bowl? Do we really need to host a Final Four? Or can't we host some big events anyway? You know, World Cup just rolled through Arrowhead, and I promise you, Arrowhead is a worse stadium than Empower Field is. So all of a sudden, you know, is all of this worth the cost? Because I think PSLs came into play when the public sentiment started to turn against taxpayer money funding stadiums. And smart, rich people found a way to get around it and still get that money from people. Well, now I think people are getting wise to this scheme as well. So my advice, for what it's worth, reverse course on this. Don't go through with this. Now, while I'm on the topic of bad ideas, here's another one that the Broncos have right now. Please, they don't need to bring in Taysom Hill. I knew this was coming the minute he announced that he was leaving the New Orleans Saints, retiring, going on sabbatical, whatever it was. I knew that the Broncos would be a landing spot. Why? Part of the reason why the Denver Broncos are where they are now is because Sean Payton brought in his own guys to build up the culture. Well, guess what? Mission accomplished. The Broncos culture is great. Now, all the Broncos should be interested in are players that help them win football games on Sunday, and I don't see a way that Taysom Hill does. He doesn't provide a different dynamic. I just earlier this hour talked about Bo Nix's ability to run the football. So what point is there to having Taysom Hill? Unless you're planning on Bo Nix getting hurt again and you're planning on going for it on 4th down in the AFC Championship and you need a more reliable running quarterback, there's no reason to bring in Taysom Hill. We don't have to do this. This is like the Von Miller thing. The Broncos are beyond this stuff. If players can't help them win on Sundays, they don't need to waste their time. Taysom Hill can come in and be a guest assistant coach. Peyton can give him tickets to the game. He can come and mentor Bo Nix. Although I don't know what Bo Nix will take away from Taysom Hill. Like, it's just not necessary. It's probably going to happen. I don't see the point. I just talked about this last week. Like, not everybody can produce in the Broncos offense. We're talking about 3 running backs deep: Evan Ingram, Jalen Waddle, Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Bo Nix running with the football. Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant still need to be developed. Like, and then you're going to add in Taysom Hill and give him a couple of plays every game? For what? Just getting in the way. You're so close. Unless you can seriously look yourself in the mirror and say Taysom Hill takes us from an AFC championship team to a Super Bowl champion, then why even entertain it? So no personal seat licenses, no Taysom Hills. That's what I say. Give me your thoughts. 719-24-7. 1313. No gimmicks. No gimmicky stuff. This is a serious football organization and a serious Super Bowl contender, or at least they claim to be. Don't take a stroll down memory lane. Don't bring in Taysom Hill because of nostalgia. Come on. Let's worry about the players on the roster. I just talked about how the Denver Broncos were the second worst team in the NFL in drops. Those reps that you're trying to draw up a play for Taysom Hill, you could use to get Pat Bryant another look so he can develop as a NFL wide receiver. Sean Payton says he'll see him in a few days. He's in no hurry to make a decision on him, but he is. I mean, clearly he intimated that he's going to talk to Taysom Hill about joining the Denver Broncos. I just don't think it is necessary. 719-24-7, 1313. Coming up next, we'll get back into the big story of the day. The MLB trade deadline is passing at 4 o'clock Mountain Time. No matter what happens between now and then, nothing will top the story of Tarek Skubal going to the LA Dodgers. Are the Dodgers ruining baseball? Does there need to be a salary cap? And Skubal spoke today, which if you're already mad about it, you're only going to get more mad after you hear what Tarek Skubal had to say. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in. Great to have you, whether you're listening to the show, Extra Sports 1300, 740 KVOR, or whether you are watching the show anywhere you scroll, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, X, Instagram. We are in all of those places at Extra Sports 1300, at 740 KVOR, and I am at Gingerly Tweets on the X platform and at GingeWatch on both Instagram and Threads. If you want to give me a follow there, I would greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to take your participation in today's show to the next level and be a part of the conversation, I fully support that. In fact, that's kind of what I'm here for. 719-24-7. 1313 is the number you could call or text into the show that way, or you can simply drop a comment on the live stream that you may be watching. MLB trade deadline has passed, and nothing, as I suspected, of more significance than what happened over the weekend, which is Tarek Skubal going to the LA Dodgers in what is the final death blow to this current system of Major League Baseball. There is going to be a lockout, and the one issue that the owners will not budge on and will not allow us to watch baseball again until it is agreed to is a salary cap and a salary floor. And I started the show by saying this. The Dodgers don't need to apologize for anything. The Dodgers don't need to feel shame for anything, but they have exposed the many flaws in this financial system that Major League Baseball has. And they deserve credit for doing that because they are the smartest organization, maybe in all of sport. Okay, so if you're a Dodger fan, I know you're feeling persecuted right now. Hold your head up high. We wish that our teams that we rooted for cared about winning as much and did as much to try and win as the LA Dodgers. I mean, that's just the facts. But it's also a fact that the Dodgers have exposed how broken the financial system is in Major League Baseball and how it needs to be changed. And if you don't agree with that, then what makes baseball special to the point that they can't abide by some of the same rules the NBA, NFL, and NHL does? Right? Why does baseball need to stay with no salary cap and no salary floor when all of these other sports in the United States or in North America, for that matter, have this system? The way they do it is the way we like our sports. We like the playing field leveled. And the Dodgers have shown just how uneven this playing field has become. And baseball needs to remedy that. I am not criticizing the LA Dodgers. I am praising them. You will only hear praise from me when it comes to the LA Dodgers. But baseball, Major League Baseball, on the other hand, deserves criticism. And kind of the start of all of this, and where Major League Baseball screwed up and allowed this Dodgers team to exist, is when they valued the Dodgers television deal at $3 billion. It was the Fox deal that Frank McCourt turned down. They valued it there, and they said that's what is going to count towards revenue sharing, which is supposed to be the way that the Dodgers prop up everyone else in Major League Baseball. It's at $3 billion. Well, their television contract is almost $8.5 billion. So this is money they don't have to sacrifice. They get to take it. And this is where they turn around and they defer all of these salaries. That's not the Dodgers' fault. It's really not. And I'm not expecting them to offer up money and say, you know what? You valued at $3 billion, we got $8.5 billion. here's a few extra shekels so the Pittsburgh Pirates and Colorado Rockies can compete. No, I'm not saying they have to do that. But Major League Baseball, who represents every team, not just the Dodgers, has to do what's right for the sport. And this is what they are going to do. Now, I'm not making the Dodgers out to be the villains here. But when Tarek Skubal says what he said today, it's hard for me to say, don't make the Dodgers out to be the villain here. This is from Jesse Rogers of ESPN. Here's what Tarek Skubal said about all of this hoopla regarding him going to the LA Dodgers. Every team could trade for me. I don't sympathize with people that blame the Dodgers for anything they've done. It's a winning organization. I really don't sympathize with people that are complaining because the Dodgers do all the right things. Now, two issues with this. One, let's take every sentence but the first one. Tarek Skubal's not wrong. I just got done saying all of that stuff. However, you can't say that. You can't say that if you're Tarek Skubal. Because now you're saying, nah, boo-boo, we're better than everybody else, and that's going to draw the ire of baseball people. So you can't say that even though you're right. That first sentence is absolute BS. That's absolute nonsense. Every team could trade for me. Yes, in theory. But my follow-up to Tarek Skubal would be, were you willing to sign other places? Which I'm sure he would say, I'm open to it. But would that be the truth? Because if you were, and let's be honest, the Brewers, the Rays, and some of these other teams that were in on Tarek Skubal, they had pretty good intel. Okay? If Scott Boras told them that Tarek Skubal was willing to take less money than he would get with the LA Dodgers to be with the Brewers or the Rays because they're still two of the better teams in baseball and that's all Tarek Skubal wants to do is win, I think the Brewers or the Rays would have offered more. I think they believe, like is the common belief, insiders and outsiders in the game, that Tarek Skubal is always going to go to the LA Dodgers. So if you want to acquire Tarek Skubal and your name isn't the Dodgers, you're renting him. Why in the world would the Brewers and the Rays offer up the same package that the Dodgers offered when they know for a fact that Tarek Skubal, being represented by Scott Boras, is going to take the most money he possibly can, and the Dodgers are going to be the team that offers him that, and they're going to defer half of it, which other teams cannot do. Again, none of this is the Dodgers' fault. But to sit there and say anyone could have traded for me, you know darn well, Tarek Skubal, that if you were in the position of some of these other teams, you would not have traded for you either. So he's making it very difficult for me to paint the Dodgers as anything other than the villains in this. I don't believe that they are, but you can't sit there with a straight face and say anyone could have traded for me. Not for you being a 2-month rental. That is organizational malpractice. To give up 2 of your top 10 prospects for a guy that's only going to play for you for a couple of months. The Brewers and the Rays cannot afford to do that. And Skubal knows that, and baseball knows that. But again, this is the guy that bailed on Team USA during the World Baseball Classic. So that's the thing about the Dodgers too. Like, you may not like the Dodgers, but look at them on an individual level, There's so many likable people on that team, and now they've added Tarek Skubal. That's brought that average down a little bit. Take your thoughts. 719-24/7-1313. Albert says Yankees, Mets, and Red Sox all have the ability to use the level of money they are already spending now to combat the Dodgers, but those organizations spend the same amount poorly. Having a great farm system, a strong analysis department, and the foresight to push the limits on deferred payroll are available to all teams, even the Rockies. You're not 100% right, and I'll tell you why. Okay, this idea that just do all of this, that the Dodgers do. Are they the only team that can do this? No, they're not. You're right about that. But to bring the Rockies or the Pirates, and this is why I get a little bit tired of in this argument. Not every owner has the net worth of Mark Walter, Peter Guber, and Magic Johnson combined. Okay, so unfortunately, even though it seems like there are more billionaires in the world now than there ever have been at any point in our history, they're still not in abundant supply, and they all don't want to own baseball teams. So I think you could certainly say, Steve Cohen with the Mets. You could talk about Steinbrenner, although this is the problem when you get a scion, right? This is Hal Steinbrenner. This isn't George. Is he bringing as much of his own money into the equation as his father did? But you're right. There are more teams that could do some of this stuff. But not every team can. It's not even half. And at what point, if we went down and listed the teams that are capable of being similar to the Dodgers, and again, keep in mind that the Dodgers aren't putting in all the money they should be into revenue sharing. We have to include that in the conversation here. Because of Major League Baseball's oversight and their mess up, the LA Dodgers are hoarding money. That is, if Major League Baseball didn't make the mistake that they made, they would be paying that into revenue sharing. But let's say, how many teams do there have to be that can do something similar to what the Dodgers do before, to where you say, you know what, it doesn't need to be changed. It doesn't need to be like the NFL, NBA, and the NHL. We don't need a salary cap. Is that 3 other teams? 5 other teams? We're talking about the whole league here. What's best for the whole league? I brought up the Premier League last hour, right? There are 6, 7 teams in the Premier League that have a realistic shot year in and year out of winning because of how much money they have. Everyone else in the league has no chance. And if you remember Leicester City a few years ago, this improbable 1,000-to-1 shot of winning the Premier League, it has bankrupted that club. It has ruined that club. That 1 year has financially ruined them because they stretched beyond their limits to compete. But in the Premier League, there's another thing that teams can look forward to. There's a Europa League that they can look forward to. There's promotion and relegation. There are other things that fan bases of other clubs can look forward to and make that a part of the season. Major League Baseball, it's winning a World Series. That's it. So if you have no realistic shot of competing on a semi-regular basis for that, what else do you have? So for the betterment of Major League Baseball, they need to have a salary cap, and they absolutely need to have a salary floor. We cannot forget that. They need a salary floor. And I'm looking at the A's, whatever the heck they're called these days, whatever city they play in, they got to up their game. That has to be part and parcel, a cap and a floor. And when they do that, guess what? The Dodgers are still going to be looked at as one of the best organizations. They're not going to have to jettison all these players. They're going to be grandfathered in. The Dodgers are still going to win World Series. But the best thing for sports that we have decided in our country is the feeling that this could be our year. That's the most powerful emotion that sports fans have. This could be our year. In reality, for so many teams, salary cap or no, they don't have a chance. For all intents and purposes, they don't have a chance. But if there's a cap and a floor, fan bases will believe they have a chance. And what does that mean? They're going to the ballpark. They're watching on television. They just need the belief. The problem with the Dodgers is not actually that they've gone back to back and they're going to win a third World Series. It's that going into the year, the majority of teams feel like they have zero chance. And some of them are well-run organizations. We're not always talking about the A's and the Rockies here. It's the best thing for the sport. You could give credit where credit is due to the LA Dodgers while still acknowledging that the rest of North American sports operates a certain way, and Major League Baseball is not special. They are not better than everybody else. This is what we want. And quite frankly, it's probably long overdue that we get a cap and a floor. 719-24-7. 13-13. Rockies made a couple of moves. So I'll tell you what those are and see if you think that means that a new day is dawning at 20th and Blake, that they were able to make some moves. More Drive Time Sports after this. So Rockies did make a few moves at the trade deadline. The one that is of most note is the trade they made today with the Chicago White Sox, trading Brenton Doyle. And the reason why I say it's the most notable is because the return that they got, Mason Adams, in particular, is a top 10 prospect in the White Sox system and is somebody that's close to being major league ready. Outside of that, they traded Antonio Senzatella for 2 prospects with the Milwaukee Brewers. So the Brewers' big move after not trading for Terry Skubal is acquiring Antonio Senzatella. Yikes. They're not giving up top prospects for Antonio Senzatella, and Victor Vodnik, reliever for the Rockies, is heading to Miami. So the return, not plentiful for the Colorado Rockies. Now, you could take this one of two ways. You could either say, well, maybe this front office isn't any better at its job than previous iterations, or you can look at it and you say, this is Paul DePodesta doing the best he can with what he's got. Okay, all these guys, to a degree, are all lottery tickets, right? They're all prospects. They're all lottery tickets. But at this point, you want Brenton Doyle, you want a couple lottery tickets. You want Antonio Senzatella, you want a couple lottery tickets. You want Victor Vodnik, or do you want a bag of baseballs? This is already one of the busier trade deadlines that the Rockies have had in years. I wasn't a proponent of them trading Hunter Goodman. I don't think the time is right for that. And how many other guys outside of that had real value that could get back a haul? And the answer is no one. I think the Rockies front office did as well as could be expected, unless they were going to move Hunter Goodman. And maybe the Red Sox offer for Hunter Goodman wasn't good enough for the Rockies, but it was good enough for the Orioles to get Adley Rutschman, or maybe they upped their offer to get Rutschman from Baltimore instead of Hunter Goodman. But this is the reality of where the Rockies are. They just don't have anything of value. So move the guys that you're sure are not going to be a part of the next competitive Rockies team, which I could say all 3 of these guys are probably not going to be, and take your chances. And that's one thing we haven't seen yet. And we won't see for a little while is the ideas at the minor league system. How much better at player development will this iteration of the Colorado Rockies be? Well, we're going to find out with some of these guys. But I don't look at this trade deadline and I'd say it's a failure on this front office. I say it's a failure on the previous front office that the Rockies don't have anything of value to offer outside of Hunter Goodman. Now, there was some thought that because Kyle Freeland was on that initial list that the Rockies put out to other teams saying, hey, you can trade for these guys. And then yesterday he went and threw a complete game. So did that up his value enough? Did the Rockies pull him off the market after doing that? I would hope that's not the case. I just think, good on Kyle Freeland for putting in that kind of performance yesterday, but I think the damage with him has been done. And I like Kyle Freeland, and his decline is one of the saddest things about Rockies baseball, is that the guys that even are born and raised here end up succumbing to Coors Field and altitude? I mean, you would think if anybody would work, it would be Kyle Freeland. Maybe his stuff isn't the greatest, but he's a bulldog out there on the mound. He competes. And that's still true. He still competes, but he's declined so much. I don't know how much value that he had. But I said, again, to the Hunter Goodman point, that was the big test. Not whether they would be able to deal Brenton Doyle or Antonio Senzatella. Would they decide to move Hunter Goodman? And the fact that they stood pat, I think it was actually the right call. And we may not even have a baseball season next year, and then we'll revisit the Hunter Goodman thing. I think they have some runway here to still get good value for a two-time All-Star catcher in Hunter Goodman. So I'm not sitting here, I'm not trying to be too effusive with my praise when it comes to the Rockies because they ended up making 3 minor moves. But it's more action than we have seen from the Rockies in a trade deadline recently. And the fact that they held on to Hunter Goodman, I think was the right move. And again, that's the whole thing this season with the Rockies is just, let's just see if there's some different ideas. Let's just see if it's a little different. And I think you're seeing that. It's different. I don't know that it's better. In some ways, it's better because I like watching the Rockies more now than I have in the previous few years. The style of baseball they play is more exciting, more pleasing to watch. But we don't know if they're really moving the needle at all in terms of rebuilding this team. So you just want to see that there are different ideas, and it seems like on every occasion where this Rockies regime can say, hey, we're a little bit different here, they've differentiated themselves. So that's what happened with the Rockies at the trade deadline. And Antonio Senzatella, that's a name, certainly. Guy that was with, remember when it was him and Freeland and Marquez? Man, it felt like the sky was the limit back then. And it all went wrong. Let's get to a couple of your texts. Stick with baseball here as we continue to debate the merits of baseball shutting down to basically dismantle the machine that is the Los Angeles Dodgers in the wake of the Tarek Skubal trade. Albert making the case that more teams can try to replicate what the Dodgers can do. More teams should be trying, and I think it kind of plays into, I'm not saying Albert's dabbling in this conspiracy theory, but there is a conspiracy out there that nobody else offered anything of value because the owners really want there to be a lockout. I can't go that far because they will lose money. I think it was more about Tarek Skubal's unwillingness or perceived unwillingness to sign this offseason for anyone but LA. But it's going to the argument of, are the Dodgers doing too much or is everybody else not doing enough? And I think there are points on both sides. But I lean more towards the Dodgers have exposed so many flaws in this financial system Major League Baseball has. They have no choice but to fix it. Now, Albert adds that Monfort just brought in Greg Penner. If an owner wants to win, there's a pathway. If they want to make bank, there are excuses. Well, here's the thing. And when Greg Penner, when it was announced that Greg Penner was buying a portion of the Rockies, I theorized that there was a day in the not so distant future that Greg Penner might be the owner of the Rockies, like the majority owner. I think this is him getting his foot in the door, and he's just going to start buying up more and more of the Rockies. I truly believe that. I have not heard that. That's just a belief that I have. But you hit on something important. In order for the impact of Greg Penner to be fully felt, Greg Penner has to own the Rockies. Dick Monfort has to sell the team. So is it reasonable to ask these other owners who are millionaires and not billionaires to say, well, you just need to get out? Like you just don't deserve to be here. Or do you want them to take on private equity to make more money? Because I think we've seen with private equity, having them involved leads to some bad decisions. Jaylen Brown getting traded to Philadelphia 76ers. So I don't know if you want that, but that would be a cash infusion. I think the thing is, we are, and I'm guilty of this over the weekend and in it today. When we debate this topic, we got to look more in the middle. You know, either people are arguing against the Dodgers or they're arguing against, you know, the Athletics. And it's like, well, let's see what's going on in the middle ground here. Because what I see in the middle ground, and let's take Milwaukee, for instance. Okay. Well-run organization, smart organization. They become competitive. Should that owner sell? His organization's doing a good job. Should he sell because he doesn't have enough money to outbid the Dodgers for Tarek Skubal? There are a healthy amount of teams in the middle, and maybe they're the ones that we should really be talking about. The ones that are trying to win, the ones that aren't trying to necessarily turn a profit. They're trying to win, and they're just butting their heads up against a wall because they just can't routinely compete with the Dodgers. And you have to ask yourself, how many teams are capable of doing what the Dodgers are doing? I think that number is very small. How many teams are just using all of this as an excuse? I think that's a bigger number, but not a huge number. And I think there's a whole lot of other teams in the middle. And I think that the Rockies might be one. You know, I've said a lot of things about Dick Monfort. I don't believe that he's cheap. For many, many years, the Rockies spent above where their market size was. So I don't think that you can label him as cheap. I just think that the Rockies have for a long time not been good at their jobs. And there's a difference. I think there are a lot of teams that are trying to win that can't under this system. And we're not talking about those teams enough because we're focused on either making our case because that the Dodgers are ruining baseball, or it should be on the soon-to-be Las Vegas A's to do more to try and win. I think both are – there's truth to both of them, but again, we got to talk about the bigger picture, what's good for the game. On another note, before we take a break here, Tony says, Ryan, maybe Coach P, as in Coach Payton, knows Taysom Hill's abilities better than us. Maybe, just maybe, says love the show, because he knows how sensitive I get. So he wanted to put that in there so I don't feel attacked. This is in response to me saying I don't think that the Broncos should be in the Taysom Hill business. Yes, I think Sean Payton knows Taysom Hill better than I do. I'll admit that. But is Taysom Hill going to be a difference maker for the Denver Broncos? Or is it Sean Payton just wanting to bring in another one of his guys? Because the novelty of Taysom Hill doesn't hit the same when you have one of the best running quarterbacks in the league, or one of the best, most athletic with his legs quarterbacks in the league in Bo Nix, right? Do you need Taysom Hill's running ability when you have Bo Nix? I don't think so. So this bringing him in does not, I truly don't believe, even with Peyton maybe knowing Taysom Hill better than I do, I don't think Taysom Hill at this point in his career is a needle mover. I don't think we're going to be looking back at the end of the season and saying the Denver Broncos won the Super Bowl because they had Taysom Hill. So if that's true, if you agree with that, Tony, why bring him in? If he's not going to help you win a Super Bowl. I just don't believe that he can. 719-247-1313. Actually, I want to give you a different number. And that number is 719-715-0740. Why am I giving you that number? Well, because it is time to qualify our first group, first listener for the to qualify for, I'm losing my mind here. Sorry. 719-715-0740. The fifth caller to call that will be qualified to win 4 season tickets to this upcoming Air Force football season. We will get a bunch of qualifiers over the next couple of weeks, and then we will draw a winner when we get closer to kickoff. So fifth caller, 719-715-0740. Good luck, and we'll be back after this. Welcome back to Drive Time Sports. Congratulations to Julie. She is our first qualifier, at least on this show. Jim Arthur had a qualifier this morning on Colorado Springs Morning News. Thanks to all of you. We got a lot of calls. Appreciate all of you. Don't worry, there is another chance, 2 chances actually, tomorrow to qualify for the 4 Air Force season tickets. The first will be between 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. with Jim Arthur and Sean Martinez on Colorado Springs Morning News. And then I'll have another opportunity for you tomorrow on this show. But Julie is our first qualifier out of the gate. What else did I want to get into? There are a few young players with the Denver Broncos that I am very interested in this upcoming season, one of which is Jahdae Barron. And I hadn't heard much of anything, so I'm not, I don't think anybody should panic about anything other than an injury, but hadn't heard much on Jahdae Barron and heard a lot of Riley Moss propaganda. In fact, more today. Apparently, he jumped up with Cortland Sutton and ripped the ball away from him. Everything that Riley Moss does well is being tweeted out by Broncos media. Feels coordinated, but whatever. I'm not saying they're lying. He did those things, but a lot of Riley Moss conversation, not a lot of Jahdae Barron, which I think this is an important year for Jahdae Barron to simply be on the field. We got to see more of Jahdae Barron, a first-round pick a couple of years ago. We got to see him on the field more, or else you'll start to wonder whether the Broncos missed with that first-round pick. When, as Tom will be the first to point out, there were other players that the Broncos could have taken, Omarion Hampton, a running back being one of them. They could have taken him. And over the weekend was the first time I had heard anything about Jahdae Barron, and it was that they were playing him at safety, which is not a good thing. It does not speak well of Jahdae Barron, because that to me smacks of, we just got to find this guy a spot. Maybe not because he's playing so well that we got to find him a spot, but that he can't break through in the positions that we drafted him for, so we're trying to move him to a different spot. Well, Sean Payton kind of said, no, that's not the case. We're not playing him at safety, we're playing him outside, playing him at nickel. So everything is what it has always been with Jahdae Barron. But still, not hearing a lot about him and how well he's doing, and not seeing a lot of highlights posted on social media from Jahdae Barron. Too early to, make any grand proclamations regarding that, but just not great early on for one of the few promising young players that the Broncos have. Another guy, very different story. Jonah Ellis. Broncos aren't trying to find a different position for them. They thought about it, and then they said, no, we're not doing that. He is going to play on the outside. Here's Sean Payton on why.
It just, for me, felt like, man, we're taking a position that's harder to find and moving him to a position that we think might be a little bit easier to replace. So that's not to say that we can't package a few things, but I think we felt like, man, he's really ascending as an edge player, and we didn't want to disrupt that.
And I think that's absolutely the right call. There are positions that mean more, and to Sean Payne's point, are a little bit harder to master, and pass rusher is one of them. If Jonah Ellis is showing signs, and we've seen, I know he couldn't track down Drake May on that last run in the AFC Championship, but I saw a lot of good from Jonah Ellis last year. And I do think he'll continue to ascend. inside linebacker, as the Broncos have shown. They took the chance on Dre Greenlaw because why not? Buy low for a guy who's been a really productive player, give it a shot. But at the end of the day, you look at their inside linebackers. Okay, clearly they have not prioritized that position. They're a little bit weaker at that position, but it's okay. Because you can't, in a salary cap sport, and we've been talking about a sport that doesn't have a salary cap and how a certain team can fill every role on their roster. In a salary cap, you have to make sacrifices. And it's the same reason why I said Vita Vea doesn't make sense with the Denver Broncos, because the Broncos have some guys there and it's not as important of a position as some of the others, defensive tackle. So if you're going to sacrifice defensive tackle, inside linebacker, these feel like the right spots to say, you know what, we're not going to maybe put our most talented athletes at that position. And then you throw on top of it something that Sean Payne did not mention there. Do we know that the Broncos don't need help in the pass rush? Do we know what's going to happen with Jonathan Cooper? There's a world where Jonah Ellis is opposite Nick Benito. So it's not to say that the Broncos couldn't use reinforcements at that position either. So I think this is absolutely the right call. But part of it is what Sean Payne mentioned, that Jonah Ellis is ascending. If he was stalling out, if they weren't seeing the development, then maybe they would give a thought to moving positions. But if he's continuing to get better and better, keep him there. Unlike Jahdae Barron, seeing a lot of Jonah Ellis stuff out of training camp. He's flashing quite a bit over these last few days in practice. And I think he's on a team that by choice and by circumstance is very veteran-led. They don't have a lot of young players. Right? Part of it is the trades that they made, starting with Russell Wilson, and they got Sean Payton. Now they get Jalen Waddle. They gave up some of their premium draft capital where those young players would come from. But also a lot of the moves Sean Payton has made were to bring in older players to get this thing rebuilt faster. And it certainly worked to this point. There are only a few young players on this team that you think can truly have an impact on the Denver Broncos. Jonah Ellis is one of those players. Jahdae Barron is one of those players. I think R.J. Harvey clearly is one of those players as well. With Jalen Waddle, it's kind of put, for me, Troy Franklin and Pat Bryant on the back burner. If one of them emerges, awesome. Right? All the better. But you got Waddle, you got Sutton, you got Marvin Mims. We're talking about 3 running backs that they're working in. We talked about Evan Ingram last week. Like, there are a lot of people higher in the pecking order than Troy Franklin or Pat Bryant. But I think that's good for them in the sense that they can just they can just develop. Right? Jahdae Barron is a guy, R.J. Harvey as well, got a little bit more pressure on him. Got to start producing. Franklin and Bryant don't. They can just progress at their own rate, and if we see them pop up every now and again this season for the Denver Broncos, then great. But just not a lot of young players. And then I haven't heard anything on Jonah Coleman, who figured to be their most impactful rookie this season. And I use it, put impactful in air quotes, because I don't, again, it's a crowded room, a lot of mouths to feed. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, my thoughts. Are the Dodgers bad for baseball, or did they simply expose the flaws in Major League Baseball that need fixing? That is coming your way next. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on KVOR and Extra Sports 1300.